Dan, welcome to the Guild of Dads podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure
To be here.
Yeah, likewise. And before we came on air, we were discussing the different, lockdown measures and stuff, and that we're all facing at this quite interesting time for all of us in the UK right now. So it's certainly going to be a discussion around mental health that's definitely worth having with what is going on at the moment. That is for sure.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, we've just been comparing both good and not so good kind of experiences, even in the last sort of 24 hours, haven't we? And I think the biggest challenge, I think, for people's, I suppose, mental health really can be getting that hope. You've seen as depending on what part of the country you're in, you've gone up and down tiers, and you've been allowed to do stuff, and then you haven't been allowed to do stuff. And I think it's a natural instinct that once you're allowed to do something, you don't think that that's going to be taken away again. Mm. So I think going into another national lockdown as we've kind of gone into in the last 24 hours or so, it's just that realization of taking maybe that little bit of hope about, and I've certainly seen through Andy's Man Club and people that I kind of liaise with that there's been a rise in people struggling even in the last 24 hours really.
Yeah, and it's interesting you talk about hope, because funnily enough, I walked past my daughter on the computer this morning working from home, and their headmaster of their secondary school had done a video to the pupils, and he was talking about having that hope that things will get back to normal and stuff, and I think it's we you and me have both got a sort of common interest in the work of Viktor Frankl, and he makes a point of how you can react in the circumstances to something, no matter how bad the circumstances are, that you have ultimate kind of dominion over your own thoughts and how you react to those circumstances. And and I think one of the most powerful things I think at the moment is for people to kind of work out what is in their control and what isn't in their control, because I think that with the news and the noise that's going on at the minute, it's easy to kind of get down this rabbit hole of stressing about stuff that you have no control over whatsoever. But there are actually a lot of things that you can control in terms of how you show up and how you conduct yourself, and there are many things that are in your control right now.
Yeah, it's an exercise that I do quite a lot, actually, both from a personal point of view and a professional point of view. Is on a piece of A4 paper, I draw 3 circles, circle in the middle, one a bit bigger around it, and then another one that's wider. And it's kind of a brain dumping exercise, if you like, and everything that's going on in my brain, everything that's going on around me and within that, I place all these things, all these actions into 3 circles. So the inner circle is my circle of control. So what that have I got going on that I can physically control myself? The next ring round is what can I influence? Maybe what can't I control? I haven't got direct responsibility for that. But what can I influence? So there I'm listing a number of things there that I can get influence. And then probably the most important one, certainly for me, is everything else. And it's literally, I call it it is everything else. So everything else, do I have control over it? No. Do I have influence over it? No. Right, okay, let's write it down, because I think it's really important. I'm a big advocate of getting stuff out of your head, and certainly out of my head. I write it down, I have a look, it's a very visual aid then. Right, okay, I've got this circle, right, these are the things I can control. So they're the first things I am concentrating on, because I can physically control the outcomes of that. The next thing is, right, okay, what can I influence? Right, okay, well, I'll get onto those sort of things as well. And then everything else you put to one side. Like, I can't control it, I can't influence it, I'm not going to worry about it, but I've acknowledged that it's there. I've acknowledged that it's bothering me. I've acknowledged that it's in my brain, it's in my thoughts, and it might be causing me concern, but there's absolutely nothing I can do about it. So let's put that to one side, and getting it out of there, I suppose, realigns the focus then, doesn't it, in terms of what you've got on, whether it's that hour, whether it's that half a day or that week or month or whatever the time frame is. I find it a really, really useful exercise especially when we get bombarded with sort of huge amounts of information about changes. Might as well sort of say about the kind of lockdown. I'm self-employed. My partner works for the NHS. I've got a 5-year-old son who lives between mine and his mum's house. She's just started a new job. The schools were closing. All these kind of things that were going on, that it's quite easy to get. And I spent probably 5 minutes going, my God, what am I going to do? My head's going mad and I'm starting to get a headache and I'm flustered and I'm stressed and all these kind of things. My shoulders are getting tight. I'm feeling like really annoyed. I've realized that for the last 15 minutes, I've sat on my computer screen and I've literally not done a thing. And I can tell that I've not done a thing is because the screensaver's come on. And I'm kind of going there and I can feel like my head's about to explode because everything's going on there. And then I just take myself back, do that exercise, right? Okay, what can I control? What can I influence? And then within the next half an hour, I've sorted my son out with being able to go to school. I'm able to support my partner who's working 13-hour shifts in the NHS. To an extent, I can support my son's mum who's just started a new job. Because we're still on amicable terms, and I think it's really important that that I can support her in her new job with regards to our son as well. I've sorted the nursery out and all these kind of different bits. Whereas for 15 minutes, I felt like my head was going to explode. But just being able to take that step back, and like you say, we share the thing with Viktor Frankl. And there's another book that I've just read, which I absolutely love. It's by a guy called Paul McGee, and his book's called Sumo. And it stands for Shut Up, Move On. And it's fantastic. It's written very differently to Viktor Frankl's book, but a lot of what he talks about in there is how do you control what you can control and release everything else, and how you look at that circumstance is really important in terms of the outcome as well.
Yeah, and that circle exercise, is that something because that's really powerful. Do you do that on like a daily basis, or do you do it weekly, or just as and when you need to?
No, as and when I need to, really. I think I suppose like a lot of people, I quite like lists. I like to write to-do lists. To the right hand side of me, I've got a big whiteboard that's up on the wall there that's got a load of information kind of in there. So I'm kind of detailed. The one thing I'm always conscious about, and this has come from when I had a really kind of tough time with my own poor mental health, and one of the coping strategies that I found really worked for me was how can I most effectively get the information out of my head? Because I was always one that would store everything in my head and feel like everything was going at 100 miles an hour. I was in that washing machine and everything was spinning around. I couldn't grab hold of one thought for long enough to deal with it. And it just meant that I would go from being in a good place to in a really bad place really, really quickly, damagingly quickly. So now that I'm able to understand that when I get into that situation, as I said, like staring at a computer screen and realizing that your screensaver's on, you've not actually done anything for 15 minutes. And then you kind of take that step back and go, okay, there's a lot going on now. I've been given a lot of information here. Let's get it out. Let's do that exercise. So I probably do that maybe once a month. It kind of really depends on the situation, but it's something I enjoy doing. I find it really therapeutic, I suppose, in a way. It's a really enjoyable actually experience.
Yeah.
To segregate what you're thinking.
Yeah, and I think it plays into the whole. I talk about this a lot on the podcast. Is this idea of men wanting to fix stuff, and this the torment we go through as men wanting to fix stuff that we can't fix, or trying to play with stuff in our heads and think, how can I fix this? How can I fix this? And then all the stuff that's unfixable gets washed in with all the stuff that's fixable, and you just end up just like thinking yourself to death almost. And it's kind of, and it's a really sort of, it's an abstract thing, but kind of sort of plays into kind of what you're saying of getting stuff out onto a piece of paper. One of my previous guests, John Gray, he's really kind of keen on the whole journaling stuff, particularly if you've got a conflict, and if you've got strong emotions that you want to deal with. One of his things is men having their kind of cave time to journal stuff out. And I've dabbled in journaling, but one of my things for this first quarter of 2021 is to establish a journaling practice, because I found that when I am stressed, or if there's stuff that's kind of on my mind, it's a very powerful thing to do. And the other thing that kind of adds an extra dimension to journaling is if you, and this is a kind of, it sounds weird, but if you almost imagine someone asking you questions sitting across from you. So you start writing and you're like, so what would someone sit across from you say? Well, how has your day been? So you write down, how's your day been? I didn't feel that great because this didn't go to plan. What would someone sitting across from you say? They'd say, well, why didn't it go to plan? So you're right, well, because of this and this and this. And do you think and how did that make you feel? So you write down, how did it make you feel? So it's imagining almost like a therapist sitting across from you, asking you questions. And that's a really powerful skill, because once you get through, I don't know, say 10 or 15 questions of as if someone's sitting across from you, and could you, stuff like, could you look at that another way? Is how important is this in the scheme of things? It begins to kind of tease out these answers out of you that you wouldn't otherwise have, and then you put it down and you go make a cup of tea, or you go for a walk, or whatever it's going to be, and then you come back and you're like, actually, this hasn't got a hold over me in the same way as it did before, and it's similar strategy to what you described with the circle exercise, that you're getting it out of your head.
And that must be a really powerful self-reflective tool for you there, Joe, as well, because to have the ability to think, what questions would I be asked if someone else was sat there, is quite a challenging thing when you kind of think about it, because at that moment in time, you I suppose you're solely concentrating on what your thoughts are. You solely concentrating on what's going on in your head. So to be able to, I think the key aspect to both of those exercises is having the ability to take a step back from what's going on. And that's what I never used to be able to do. It was like I said before about that kind of washing machine effect of, you feel like you're going at 100 miles an hour, you can't stop. And it's taken a long, long time for me to continuously develop. And I imagine for you as well, Joe, to kind of work at it, to work really hard at when things are tough. The hardest thing to do is take a step back. And that's the most important thing, I think, a lot of the time as well, especially if we're spiraling.
Yeah. And I think there's, I discussed this with previous guest, Mark, who I know you know of, and I think there's two aspects of this where you kind of like, there's the kind of the maintenance aspect of it, which is like the self-care, if you like, and then there's kind of the, what I would call the emergency aspect of it. So the maintenance self-care bit is the bit where you're kind of learning what you need to keep you on what I would call the straight and narrow. I don't mean it as straight and narrow, but that's the easiest way to kind of describe it. So making sure you're eating, making sure you're getting your sleep, and your kind of must-haves, your like non-negotiables, and then you have like the emergency toolkit, which is when things are getting pretty stressed. How do I get this stuff out of my head? So you have the kind of maintenance side and the emergency bit, if that makes any sense. So that's the kind of way I look at it, sort of thing. So. Yeah,
I think as well, kind of thinking about the period of time that we're in, and I think about a friend of mine who's going through a tough time at the moment, and naturally he's not somebody that's probably been struggled with any kind of issues with regards to mental health, certainly not for kind of a long time now. I think we find, and this is kind of no disrespect to kind of him at all, but I think there's a lot of people that we go through life on autopilot. We go to work, we spend time with the family, we go and watch our football team, we go to the pub with our mates, we do whatever it is that kind of sees us through, that makes us smile, that makes us happy. We probably don't spend too much time sitting back reflecting what impact am I having on the world? What impact am I having on my family, my friends? Am I leaving a legacy almost, I suppose, and all this kind of stuff. We're very much into the autopilot of let's just get through, let's live for the weekend, let's do whatever that kind of is. And I think the one thing that's brought home for a lot of people through various lockdowns and various sort of liberties being restricted, if you like, is we're having to take stock, aren't we? We're having to, when we're told that we cannot do the things that we enjoy doing, the things that we've always enjoyed doing, the things that we've done for the last 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, however long that is, when we can't do that, we have to fill that void. And I think that is where people are really struggling, because they've not necessarily, if I'd not gone through my mental health struggles when my son was born, like I would have struggled through this lockdown, like no end. Absolutely, I would. But if it wasn't for the fact that I have already had that struggle and I've become really reflective and I've looked at things like how I can use gratitude, how I can use my 3 circles, how I can listen to podcasts, how I can be a guest on a podcast, how I can host a podcast, all these kind of different things that provide me a different element of joy and of meaning and fulfillment. Like, I still love going to the pub, don't get me wrong. I can't wait to go for a beer. I can't wait to go and watch live sport again. I can't wait for all these things, but they're an added benefit to what I've already got, which is I'm still finding fulfillment and meaning and purpose from my life on a daily basis, because I've worked hard in the build up to this, and obviously not knowing that all this was going to come about. And I think those that don't have that, or don't know how to find that, or have never looked for that, or never thought that they've had to look for that, I think those are the people that have probably, this has hit them harder than a lot of people, a lot of other people that may be further along that kind of, I suppose, almost spiritual journey, I guess. I'm not a big spiritual fan, I guess, in terms of the term, but I suppose in a way, and as Viktor Frankl says, like, as soon as you've got your meaning, then you're kind of all good, really, aren't you? You find any way around, as long as you've got your purpose.
Yeah, I think and I think you've touched upon something there. I think the modern world encourages people to sedate themselves when they have feelings or emotions or sensations or whatever it is that is kind of uncomfortable, and it's kind of it's a byproduct of a comfortable world that we've got right now, which is that we've lived in abundance for a long period of time, where it's you can get food delivered to your door. You don't really, you could live in your house quite happily without seeing anyone, and you could survive. And lockdown is proven to people that they can do that. But I think the bad side of that is that we've never faced kind of discomfort in terms of being comfortable with very, very strong emotions and seeing those as a normal part of human existence. Because I think that, and I'm as guilty of this when I was kind of younger, you'd go out and get smashed with your mates, or you'd eat too much, or you'd party too hard, or you'd find some external stimuli to meditate the feelings that were going on inside you. But I think that the difficulty for a lot of people with lockdowns is that for the first time in their lives, it's like like on the, when you see someone on the stage at a theatre and the spotlight is following them around the stage, and they're trying to outrun the spotlight, and then all of a sudden the spotlight fixes on them and there's nowhere to hide. They've just got to stay there, in this stark bright light until the spotlight. And that's the kind of analogy I'd use for it, that you're kind of, there's nowhere to run, there's nowhere to hide. You've just kind of sort of got to face it down. And if you've not learned the tools or the skills in order to do that, or you've not had, or you've never encountered that, it's difficult. And that's why I think it's hard for people. But it's also I think it's also a massive benefit of the lockdown in some respects, because for all the people that listen to this or watching this, you will probably never go through something like this again. Your grandparents probably never went through this again, or went through this, or your parents will have never gone through this. Okay, your parents in their 60s and 70s might be going through this now, but as a working age parent, trying to hold down a job and trying to juggle all this stuff around, they won't have gone through this, So I think there are a lot of benefits in terms of people's resilience, reflecting on their lives, and I think people will grow from this, definitely.
Yeah, I hope so. I really hope so. I think there's a lot we can learn from this period. I think I constantly wind my partner up about saying, like, do you know what? The big part that I love about this is I love how simple life is. I go for a walk in the morning. I work during the day. If I've got time at lunchtime, I might go for another walk, and then I'll finish work. I'll do some exercise, and then, do you know what? If I've had a tough day, I'll get out and I'll go for a walk. I'll read a book. I've scrapped watching anything that really doesn't kind of take the interest on TV now, for reading more of a book, or watching something that's a bit more meaningful on Netflix or whatever that kind of thing is, and listening to podcasts and stuff like that. And like, bless her, like she, like I said, like she's doing a 13-hour shift now. Like when she comes home, the last thing that she wants me to do is tell her about a podcast that I absolutely love, about the latest episode I've just listened to, and it was so inspiring, and this was the mindset and all this kind of stuff. And she's going, listen, just shut up. Like, please, just shut up. But there's loads of stuff to kind of come out of to kind of come out of this. I think, like, we've got to think about our relationships, haven't we? Around who's important to us, who we go in that extra mile for. Are we keeping in touch with the people that we really care about? Because in the vast majority of circumstances, we have more time on our hands now than we've ever had. We're not running necessarily in a rat race anymore, to a big extent. So we've got the time. These time-based excuses we can no longer use, can we? Because we're fixed to our house. Like we're not going anywhere. So it's reinforced with me who's important in my life. And I think Steph as well has probably thought about that as we've gone on, and what's important, and also like looking forward to what's next. Like I don't want to fall back into getting into what we used to be like. I don't want to get back into rushing around 100 mile an hour, going everywhere, doing everything, and making sure that we're seeing the latest film or going to the latest show in the theatre, or going for drinks every night with different friends just because we're in town, sort of thing. It's a case of taking and learning from this experience. What do we enjoy? I'm absolutely loving the fact that I'm reading probably about a book a week, and I don't want that to stop. I feel so much more kind of enriched from reading than I would do from watching, I don't know, Friends for the 17th time on Netflix or whatever that you just tend to get stuck in when you don't have a lot of time, do you? You just think, well, I've got 20 minutes, I'll just chuck something else on. Well, why? Read a chapter of a book.
Yeah. It's that kind of, I don't know. I think I reached a stage. It must have been about 5 years ago, I guess, maybe a bit longer than that. And I think sometimes men reach like an impatience stage with TV. I will still watch TV. I still watch Netflix and stuff with my wife and stuff. But I can no longer sit down and kind of, if I'm bored, I won't go and watch TV. I'll go and do something outside, or I don't find it a relaxing activity in the same way as I used to, if that makes any sense. And I don't find it relaxes me, so in the same way as other things do, really. So, but yeah.
Has anything else changed for you then, Joe, during, I suppose, in the last, coming up to 12 months really, aren't we? But 9 months. What else have you noticed in terms of from yourself?
I have noticed, because I've got my day job, and then Guild of Dads, the podcast, I fit in around, evenings and weekends, and then also in the back end of this year, I've been launching the Dad Circle, which is my brotherhood and mastermind for dads. And so, in actual fact, I've been one of these weirdos that has been busier than ever, in the sense that because I'm in the supply chain, I've still been working right the way through the spring lockdown, right the way through the summer. So I've carried on working kind of business as usual, with the exception of not seeing as many people. At the same time as podcasting, at the same time as growing Guild of Dads as a podcast and as a movement, as a brand. And so I've kind of been I'm one of those like freaks that's been busier than ever, and actually I could probably do with like an 8-day week and a 36-hour day sort of thing. But in terms of actually, it's mainly been kind of seeing people. We've just not been seeing people, and I think there was obviously in the summer it relaxed a little bit, but I think that's the hardest thing is kind of not seeing people, and I think the other thing as well is from a sort of biochemical point of view. We know that kind of physical contact releases oxytocin, which is the kind of what they call a hugging hormone. It's what's released when you hug a baby. It's what's released when you hug your wife or your partner and stuff and that. And I think that is the hardest thing. I think personally, even with your mates not being able to shake their hands, like small things like that. It's that I think it's that. That's the hardest thing I've found, actually, just sort of, particularly when I walk up to friends that I know reasonably well, and, you can see they're having a hard time and you just want to kind of give them a hug and you can't do that. That's the hardest thing I've found, actually, because I just think that comes from our sort of, our kind of, our pair bonding and from our evolution as apes and chimpanzees that need to be kind of tactile with people. And I think for me that's probably been the hardest thing. Not so much with my wife and kids, because obviously I see them, but it's more sort of your extended family or friends or whatever and stuff, and that people need an arm. This is going to sound sappy, but people need an arm put around them sometimes. People need a man hug. People need their hand shaking, okay, because that's kind of what makes us human beings. And I think the physical isolation is almost worse than the kind of not actually being able to see anyone. It's being able to see people, but not actually to be able to be tactile. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sort of first hand from that is my involvement with Andy's Man Club, and I would always when I kind of ran the Manchester club or version of the club. I would stand outside we would start our meetings at 7. I would be outside from 6:10, welcoming everybody in, and everyone got a handshake. For those that I knew a bit better and I knew that I could get away with it, they got a hug. And it was that kind of built really strong bonds when it came to that group. And some of my friends now, some of my closest friends now, I met through Andy's Man Club, and to see them now and not be able to shake hands or give them a hug, knowing what they've been going through and the like, it's so difficult, and you do miss that element of kind of closeness, really. I suppose with the guys, and I think it loses an aspect of a group like that, as strange as it probably sounds to a lot of people, but when you lose that kind of personal aspect of being able to shake someone's hand, give them a hug, as blokes, like I think we miss that, and I think there's a small element of that misses that from the group, really, in terms of feeling connected and part of a community.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge, but look, something's better than nothing. And while that's only a small part of what that group offers, there's still a huge amount that that it offers, and does a kind of a lot of good. But it'll be nice when I can get back to giving everyone a hug
Yeah.
when they turn up.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because, funny enough, I discovered the book, the Love Languages book by Gary Chapman a number of years ago, and and one of the things in that is physical touch. And when I say physical touch, I don't mean like sexual physical touch, just like tactile physical touch. And it's amazing when it's amazing when guys study that book as like a book study or whatever. Generally, most guys, their love languages, it'll be two or three love languages, but one of them is generally always physical touch with guys. Most guys need kind of physical connection sort of thing. So it's interesting that people wouldn't think that, but actually, my experience of the love languages book would suggest to me that most, I would say probably over 80% of guys need to have that physical touch, and either from a relative or child or friend or whoever, but have that tactile relationship, which definitely.
And I think going back to what we were saying before about people struggling as well, and being virtual is, I think people find a lot more difficult. I think you have the added issues of isolation and loneliness. Even if you live with your family, you can still very much feel isolated and lonely. And support groups are fantastic, and a huge advocate, obviously, of quite a few of them. But certainly with AMC, I think it becomes more difficult for people to open up and talk about it, and feel connected, and feel like they're part of something, and feel like that they're not alone. And that's difficult through a computer screen, but also like we were saying before about the not being able to shake someone's hand. Someone that turned up for Andy's Man Club for the very first time, they're nervous. You can see it in their face. They're nervous. They don't know what to expect. All these kind of bits, and straight away, I would make sure that it was either me or one of the other guys would be straight over to them, introduce yourself, shake hands with them, because it's kind of that man thing to do, isn't it? It's like that old school bit of respect, make eye contact, we shake hands, and you just feel like, actually, I'm not alone here. There's people here that are in it with me, and that can be more difficult for guys going through what we're all situation, but obviously we've all got different circumstances, and we're all dealing with it differently as well.
Yeah. And you talk about the guy sitting waiting to go into Andy's Man's Club. You were that guy at one point, and this kind of segues onto the sort of next part. How did you end up sitting in your car outside Andy's Man's Club for the first time?
Well, funnily enough, we're almost at. I'm just checking the date there. We're a couple of days away from my third anniversary. Is it third or second? Yeah, no, third. Must be. Second, sorry, anniversary. I'm losing track of time now. Of going to Andy's Man Club for the first time. So I suppose my story with regards to understanding my own mental health really originates. I'm going to give you a very specific date now, which is the 19th of December 2015. And the reason why I know it was that date was it was the day my son was born. So he was poorly when he was born. So after an hour, he was taken off us and taken to NICU, neonatal intensive care unit. And obviously it was Christmas time, and it was kind of weird. And I suppose even thinking about this, I've been thinking about this today, and I'll kind of go on to why in a second. But the first thing that didn't happen for me, which I was told was guaranteed that would happen for me, was when he was born and I had him in my arms. I didn't have any explosion of love. I didn't have any, oh my God, this is kind of amazing. I didn't have that eureka moment. This is what my whole life's about. I did not have that, as everybody told me that I would do. So subconsciously, not consciously, but subconsciously, I think that was a moment where my issues started. Then, like I said, after an hour, he was taken off us, and I'll not go through kind of all the details, but for the first, he was in intensive care for about a week. He kind of came out of that. He was in hospital for sort of 10 days. We got him out on New Year's Eve. Sorry, on the 30th, not New Year's Eve, on the 30th. And then the Monday after, I was in work, so I went back to work. I worked about 45 minutes to an hour from home. So I left early in the morning to miss the traffic. I got home late at night to miss the traffic, and that was my job. And so I didn't spend that much time with him in the early days. But for the first 6 months, he was in that hospital, having numerous different checks and sort of various issues. And every time he went in and had a check, he'd get the all clear. Now, from me, I could see everybody in the room, the visible relief that he's got the all clear, and I'd smile and say, that's brilliant, because I wanted him to be better. Of course I did. But inside, I didn't feel any relief. And the reason being was I was literally bottling everything up. I thought my job as a guy, as a dad, first and foremost, was to protect. Now, I felt like I'd failed in the very first hurdle because I've not been able to protect my son. A tough start to his life with having to go to intensive care. So that straight away felt like I'd failed. And then every challenge that he went through just reinforced that failure. Every time we were in the room and somebody said, he's got the all clear, he's all good, with whatever it was that he was getting tested at the time, I'd look around, everyone's relief. I'm not feeling any relief. I'm feeling guilt because I'm not feeling relief. Everyone else is happy, and I'm just reinforcing that this is my fault. I failed him. Look what he's having to go through. He's a baby. I'm meant to protect him, and look at him. He's like having to go through this, and nothing particularly invasive at the time. Once he got out of intensive care, but he was still going through that. His family, we were all going through that, and I was like, that this is my fault. This is me. I must have done something when I was younger. I must have done something that was that bad that he's turned out this way, and it's my fault. It's all down to me. So I just felt guilt upon guilt upon guilt upon guilt. Gets good news, I feel guilty. Something bad happens, I feel guilty. I pick him up and he cries. It's because I'm a bad dad, and then I feel guilty, and that really I really struggled with the connection with him. I remember the health visitor come in and being asked to leave the room so that she could speak to his mum. And then when I came back in, so I'd gone and made a brew. When I came back in, she was like, oh, do you want to go for a shower, or do you want to do this or do that? Because she'd come at a weekend. I'm going, well, not really. And she was like, go on, just go for a walk, or go and it's like at no point did anyone go, how are you doing? Like, how are you? Are you okay? And are you coping as a dad? And I would have turned around and said, yeah, I'm fine. But the truth was, I wasn't. And my now ex-wife, like she saw all the signs that the fact that I wasn't coping. She didn't at one point, and she said to me since that she didn't trust to leave my son with me alone. And that was not because she thought I would hurt him, but because I really struggled with any sort of connection with him. And she saw that I wasn't picking up on any of the clues he was giving. I was just not connected with him. So she didn't feel comfortable in leaving me alone. The amount of times that I remember that they kind of, she said, oh, I'll go to my mum's and you can have a bit of time on your own on, say, like a Saturday morning. Like, at the time, I was really grateful for it because I felt so uncomfortable being in the company of my own son. And it's kind of like, I look back now going, I'm away with work. Like I'm not spending any time with my son during the week. And then on a Saturday morning, I'm relieved because I'm not having to spend time with my son. I've always wanted to be a dad. And I look back at it now and I think, like, I'm screaming for help on the inside, but I don't know it and nobody else knows it. And nobody else knows how to kind of help me, because the only people that are kind of realizing it are those that are close to me. So there's no medical professionals here that are doing that. And then as kind of time went on, I started sort of turning to negative coping strategies. My alcohol intake rose massively. Went from having a few beers at the weekend to having a couple on a Tuesday because I'd had a bad day, having a couple on a Wednesday because I'd had a good day, having a couple on a Thursday because the day ended in Y. It was really kind of got into that kind of stage where I was probably drinking every day off the back of it. And then I remember going out and with one of my friends in Manchester. I met him after work. It was a bit impromptu, really. And I kind of messaged home and said, "Oh, I'm just going for a couple of beers with my mate." And we went out and we just ended up having a bit of a crazy night, long night. And then I was walking to get the train home, which would have been the first train home in the morning as well, from being in Manchester city centre for the night. And I walked down, and by Victoria Station in Manchester, there's a tram that comes up the hill to Shude Hill, into the centre. As I'm walking down from Shude Hill, I'm walking down, and there's a tram coming up, and the thought just, it was instinctive. The thought just, I looked at that tram and said, I need to myself. I was just started walking towards it and thought, I'm failing everybody here, but everyone would be better off without me. My son would be better off without me. My wife, I suppose now we're ex-wife, she probably is, but that would be it. The impact that I'm having on the world is nothing but negative, and the best thing that I can do, the most kind of gracious thing and the most selfless thing I can do for everybody is just not be here because I'm just a burden. And luckily for me, I didn't see them, but there was a couple of sort of probably late teenagers, early 20s group that had obviously been out drinking as well. A couple of them saw what I was doing and literally ran over to grab hold of me before the tram got there. And what I didn't realise at the time, because I thought, how did you notice that? Because I thought I was being stealthy. And
it's quite everywhere.
Yeah, well, it's quite a well lit street, and they kind of said, one of them said, the first thing I noticed is that you're crying your eyes out. And I put two and two together. I didn't even realize I was crying. I just did not realize that I was, and that was kind of, so that was, I suppose that was my, in a way, that the kind of first attempt at taking my own life. And over the next 18 months, I got medical help. I saw a counsellor, but the counsellor he got 6 sessions. It took me 5.5 sessions to understand what was the issue, i.e. the relationship with my son. So I had about half a session to kind of deal with it. And then it was kind of, thanks for coming, good luck. And off you go. If you want to come back, then you have to rejoin the waiting list, which was about a year at the time. And over the next 18 months, I made 2 more attempts at my life. And then on the 6th of January 2018, the Saturday, was the last time that I attempted my life. And that's where, on the 8th of January, to a very long-winded answer to your question, I find myself sat in a car at Oldham Leisure Centre, where Andy's Man Club in Oldham was based, nice and early. And initially, I went there because I was told to. My ex-wife told me to go because she didn't know what else to do with me. And she wanted me around for obviously for our son. And yeah, I kind of sat there, and someone actually knocked on the window and said, "Are you here for Andy's Man Club?" And even though Oldham Leisure Centre's got every facility going, I couldn't think of another reason why I was there. And I went into that room and felt like I wasn't alone anymore. And I used the term before, but it gave me hope within 10, 15, 20 minutes of being in that room, sat in a circle with strangers at a leisure centre in Oldham, they gave me hope that A, I could be a good dad, and B, I could get better. And then that's where the story, I suppose, starts for me, really.
Yeah, it goes full circle. And in terms of that sort of period after you'd sort of feel, you're feeling numb and you're not connecting with your son, and your mental health begins to deteriorate. Were you given like a diagnosis or anything for what that was, or did the doctors just say you're depressed, or what was their kind of diagnosis of what you were actually going through at that point?
So the first time I went to the doctors over it was the day after I went to walk in front of the tram. And to be fair, the doctor, bless him, asked what I did for a job, where I worked, and asked how I got to work. So I'll get the train into Manchester. And his comment was, well, no wonder you're depressed. So I was like, right, okay, mate, I've just told you that I've tried to take my own life, and you're coming up with really bad, crass jokes kind of thing. So you don't kind of get this. And he just went, right, okay, what medication do you want? What antidepressants do you want? I was like, I've no idea. I don't know. You tell me. What do I need? What do I need to take? And he's like, well, you've got these options. Okay, well, what are the side effects? One of the side effects on and I remember him suggesting, right, I think, why don't you try this one? Okay, not a problem. What's the side effect? What's the side effect of it? One of the side effects is it can make you suicidal. And I was like, don't necessarily think that's probably a good thing, since I already am. And it was just kind of a flippant, blasé way of kind of, here's some pills, I've done my job, kind of crack on. And then I went back to the doctors and saw a different doctor, and she was amazing. I broke down in her office room, whatever you kind of call it, and I literally broke down and tried to explain everything, not knowing how to, and she was the start in terms of the medical. And they kind of said, look, you're obviously suffering from depression, and at no point was it mentioned there in terms of postnatal depression. It was just said it was depression. It was only through my own research and talking to other people and people like Mark, and understanding, well, what caused my symptoms, what started it off, what were the effects of it, what were the influences of it, and all these kind of things. It's like it's, and then speaking to medical professionals subsequently and explaining these kind of things. It's all the hallmarks of postnatal depression, but at the time it was never spoke about in dads. It's rarely spoke about in dads now, although a lot of that is changing. So subsequently I was diagnosed as postnatal depression, but yeah, at the time it was, what tablets do you want?
Did you end up going on to tablets in the end, or did you go without? Or because there's various, some people are kind of like, oh, you don't need, it's such a polarizing debate around antidepressants. And I always kind of like the view that people, when people say, well, actually you kind of, if you need to take them for a period of time, you need to take them for a period of time, but don't be too proud to say, I might need to take these for a period of time. How did you were you a kind of, what was your stance on it?
Yeah, no, I was reluctant to go on to them purely because I don't like taking tablets. I don't take paracetamol if I've got the worst headache in the world. I'm just that sort of person. I don't necessarily like putting medication. I'm not a huge fan of that. So that was probably the main reason why I didn't want to, but I needed to at that time, if for no other reason, from even if it had a 1% improvement on it, but from a placebo point of view, I thought it made a 50% improvement, then that to me was good enough. And I ended up my second attempt was an overdose with antidepressants and paracetamol, ironically enough. After what I've just said, and I came off them then because it was dangerous for me to be on tablets when I'd gone through that. And I've thought a lot about this debate as you mentioned there with regards to antidepressants. And I don't think anyone should be shamed into A, taking them, or B, not taking them. I see both sides of the argument. I think my thing would be, if you're on antidepressants for a significant length of time, so if you're on antidepressants for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, then something's wrong. Like, you are not making changes to your life that will help your mental health. You're relying on tablets to kind of do that. And look, there's exceptions to every rule, and I'm certainly not going to sit here and say, like, as a general kind of blanket approach. But I think if you were sort of similar to me, you suffered from symptoms of depression, severe symptoms of depression. But to me, my life was wrong. I didn't talk about how I felt. I didn't open up about how I felt. I lived an unhealthy lifestyle. And you change all that. And look, I still have bad days. Of course I do. Everybody does. That's kind of life. But if I was sat here now, my son's 5, he turned 5 in December. If I was sat here still taking antidepressants, then to me, like, I've done something wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My life is imbalanced. And I think it's almost an ignorance. And I get what you're saying in terms of people thinking that people are really proud to take antidepressants. Well, be proud to take antidepressants if you're taking them for 3 months and you're working a way of how can you sustain your life after you start taking tablets. Don't be proud if you're taking antidepressants 5 years down the line and you're shouting out saying, I couldn't live without them, because there's something wrong in my opinion. Nowhere else would you take tablets in that respect for something that you can manage. When you wake up in the morning, you don't have a headache, you don't take paracetamol. So why are we becoming dependent 5 years down the line if you're just suffering from symptoms of depression? Because there's loads of ways in which you can improve that. I really like Johan Hari's book called Lost Connections, which talks about actually the impact of antidepressants compared to the impact of having 8 hours sleep, or having the impact of feeling part of a community, or having that kind of thing. I always use the example he uses in the books of the slums in India. We look at the slums, and I mentioned it when we spoke last time, and I'm really passionate about this because I'm really intrigued by it. We look at it from a Western point of view. We look at the slums in India and we think, oh my God, I feel so sorry for these people. They've got nothing. Look at how they're living, all this kind of stuff. They have zero depression. They have zero mental health issues in the slums in India. We're the ones doing something wrong, not them.
Yeah. And there's interesting.
So if you are celebrating being on antidepressants after 5 years, which I've seen today actually on Twitter, if you're celebrating that, to me, you're doing something wrong. You're doing something wrong. What else can you do in your life to improve your life so that you don't need to? It's scary coming off them. It really is scary coming off them, and I get it. But there's other ways in doing it. Are you doing everything that you can? Are you eating healthily? Are you sleeping well? Are you doing exercise? Are you practicing gratitude? Are you doing meditation if meditation works for you? Are you talking about how you're feeling to friends, family, support groups, whatever that may be? Are you doing all these things before just saying, well, it's all right because I just take this pill and I feel okay?
Yeah. And I think the thing is as well is I know from my discussions with you as well that you're fascinated by understanding the inner workings of your mind and learn, we touched upon this early on in the discussion today, this idea of being aware of, starting to kind of be aware of, what makes you tick, what are your things that need to be your non-negotiables that you need to be doing on a daily basis. And I think the thing is we, as a culture, I think we've got into this whole idea of taking a pill to fix stuff, and that rather than actually saying, well, why do I need to take that pill in the, and I know that some doctors are beginning to kind of be a bit more receptive to, should we say, more homeopathic ways of treating the mind and body connection stuff. But I still think there is this tendency to say, well, actually, let's treat a pill with a pill, if you know what I mean. So, so if someone's, if someone's eating too much, we'll give them a pill to stop them from eating too much. So actually why not deal with the root causes of why they're eating too much, rather than just giving another pill to stop them overeating. You know what I mean? And it's
Stop masking the symptoms.
Yeah.
And that's all that's all it. If I drink 10 beers tonight, I'll have a headache tomorrow morning. I can guarantee it. Probably if I have 5 beers tonight, I'll have a headache tomorrow morning. So if I took a paracetamol, then that would get rid of the headache. And then tomorrow night, I'll drink 5 more beers. The next day, I'll wake up, I'll have a headache, I'll take a paracetamol. And if I continue to do that, then I'll be able to go through my day without headaches. But I'll always start a day with a headache. Whereas if I just stop drinking, or if I stop drinking those 5 beers, I'll wake up the next morning, I won't have a headache.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. But so in a mental health point of view, if I'm doing something that's unhealthy, if I constantly eat junk food, and then that's going to have a negative effect on my, if I'm overweight, if I feel I'm going to feel sluggish, I'm going to feel lethargic, I'm not going to feel very motivated, then that's going to have a negative impact on my mental health. If I can't exercise, from a personal point of view, if I can't exercise, that has a really big impact on my mental health. I decided I was going to run every day in January, and on the 2nd, I pulled a calf strain doing a run. And normally that would send me into a spiral. But I spoke to Steph and said, this is what happens. This is what sends me out of. And she was like, what can you do? And I got in touch with the gym I'm a member of, and they said, we'll lend you a kettlebell and we'll give you a program for upper body workouts. We're just using that kettlebell. You won't even need to worry about your calf muscle. Within a half an hour of doing a calf strain, I've spoken about how I feel. I understand that this is normally a big trigger for me and my poor mental health going forward. I've got in touch with the gym. They very kindly have lent me a kettlebell. And within 2 hours of actually pulling the calf strain, I'm doing an upper body workout using a kettlebell. I'm finishing the workout. I'm feeling great.
Yeah.
Off the back of it. Whereas if this was last year or the year before or the year before that, a year before that, I would literally just say, I've got a fridge full of beer. I'll go and get a beer. I've got a calf strain. I'm in pain. I'd be grumpy. I wouldn't be very nice to be around. I'd drink. I'd use all these negative coping strategies. I wouldn't be bothered cooking. So I'd say to Steph, let's get pizza in, or let's get some takeaway, or whatever it kind of is. So I'd eat junk food. I'd drink alcohol, all because I've got a calf strain.
Yeah. It's a spiral,
doesn't stop
isn't it?
you working your upper body, does it?
No. And one thing I love to, I say to some of the guys that I've worked with in the past is 4 words. What can I do? And it's a really effective way, and it's another really good tool that people listening or watching this can take away. So you've made a plan to do something, and what you've just said, Dan, illustrates this. You've made a plan to do something. It doesn't go quite to plan, and you're stopped from doing it, or you've had to change plans quickly. What can I do? It might not be what you wanted to do. It might not be what you'd planned to do. But what can you do? What can you do? So, like in your case, if you've got a calf strain, can I do an upper body workout?
Yeah.
I broke my finger the other month. Okay, so I can't do lifting for 4 weeks. What body weight exercises can I do? You can apply this to anything. Oh shit, I missed the bus. What can I do? Oh, I don't know. If I've got to get to an appointment urgently, I'll look at my phone and I'll get a taxi. And it's this constant. And I think those 4 words, what can I do, are such powerful words, particularly again at the minute, because we're at the minute we're making so many changes very quickly, and it's not the way we want it to be. So what can I do? And I had an example of it this week. My daughter's school shut. She said to me, "Oh, what am I going to do for PE?" I said, "We'll go out. We'll go. Can you go for a run with Dad twice a week?" She's like, "Yeah, I'd like to run in the woods." Okay, it's going to be slippy in the woods because it's all muddy and stuff. I said, "I'll make you a deal. You do 2 weeks of running in the woods, and if you can keep it up for 2 weeks, I'll get you a pair of off-road trainers sort of thing, which will be better sort of thing." So all of a sudden it's kind of okay. It moves from what can I do to creating a solution to it and stuff, and then it kind of gamifies it a little bit and stuff, and it's once you move from that position of what can I do, then it kind of opens up other possibilities as to, well, can I gamify this here, or Can we do something, mix it up and that? And I think that's going to be the key for a lot of parents actually in the next little while. Is kind of like, well, I can't do it the way I wanted to do it. What, how am I going to do it and whatever and stuff. And even to the point where I just said to her, I said, look, I'll stick a note on Google Classrooms and say, this is what, and I'll send a message to your teacher, this is what we've done for PE. So if they want to hammer you for your homework for PE, don't worry. Dad's already taken you out for a couple of runs this week. That part of it's sorted, you know what I mean? So, and I think as parents, I think sometimes we're scared of rocking the boats with schools sometimes a little bit, and actually thinking, well, actually, the kids at the minute, they're at home in your domain. If you decide that the PE is going to be this, or design and technology is going to be making something out in the shed, doesn't really matter because they're still doing it,
And I think we've got the opportunity as parents, if our kids are at home with us, we've got the opportunity to teach them the things that we've always wanted schools to teach them, but haven't been able to, maybe because they haven't got the right facilities or the right training or the right environment. I know during the first lockdown, a friend of mine, he's big into the environment. And he lives in North Wales, beautiful part of the world, loads of outdoor space and things like that. So he would quite often, his two daughters are in primary school and they quite like going out. They're quite outdoorsy people, as outdoorsy girls as well. And they made the decision that, do you know what, we'll do the essentials. So we'll do your maths and your English and your science and things like that. But do you know what, every day we're going to go and spend 2 hours exploring nature. We're going to go and see what animals we can see. We can go and see we'll learn about birds or plants, or we're going to learn about the environment. We're going to learn about resilience. We're going to learn about all these different, like, really strong things that we should be teaching our kids, like the environment, resilience, mental health. These are the things that our kids need to be getting involved in now, because these are the things that are going to have the biggest impact on their lives going forward as they become adults. And it's so important, isn't it, that now we've got the opportunity, like you said there, what could be better for you and your daughter than going for a run in the woods? I can imagine that's going to be amazing fun. That's going to be so much fun. And you know what, if it is slippy and one of you falls over, you probably have a good laugh about it as well, wouldn't you? And if you get some new trainers at it, it's win-win.
Yeah, so it's just that, but it's getting that eye into that mindset of just pivot. It's the pivot mindset, isn't it? What can I do? And just constantly moving. Let's adjust. And it's kind of so. Military guys are really good at this kind of stuff because they know that no plan survives first contact with the enemy, as my old man used to say. Meaning that you're always going to have to be changing stuff on flipping it on a sixpence sort of thing. So
amazing.
It's been a wicked conversation tonight, Dan, and we've covered quite a lot of actually some really good and useful tactics. I think that people that are watching or listening can take away and use. Really helpful stuff, and your ability to kind of recount how it's kind of related to your sort of story coming up till now and sharing your story has been really, really, really spot on, because I think it's opened up the kind of conversation again about what we all go through as dads, and the situation that we find ourselves in becoming new parents is a completely different thing. And my previous conversation with Mark really kind of blew the lid off this whole kind of perinatal discussion, and I think the conversation with you as well is a really nice kind of juncture to see how it works from both perspectives of a couple of different guys who are working in this space and active in this space around dad's mental health. So me and Mark I'll not announce it, but I don't know whether he said it, but we've had some exciting news actually. There's a project that me and Mark are working on together today as well. So I've been on the phone to him at least twice, if not 3 times today. So it's interesting that you've got us at the end of the day, just one after another, Joe. But no, I've loved it. I really appreciate the invite to come on. It's I always enjoy our chats and follow you avidly, as you well know, on
on social media. So it's good to get this recorded.
Yeah, definitely. And if you, like I said to Mike, if you guys need any help from me in terms of conversations on your new projects and stuff, just give me a shout. As always, I'm happy to do that and stuff. And what I'll do is I'll link up Annie's Manned Club in the show notes and stuff. So if anyone wants to find out about this, it's across northern towns more, isn't it, Dan? More so than down south, isn't it? Or
one of the good things that's come out of lockdown is there's now a national online. So I don't know whether the majority of your followers are, but we are everywhere we're as far south as Plymouth and as far north as Dundee.
Ah, there you go.
So while there is a significant number of clubs that are across the rugby league heartland of the M62, we have a club in South Wales, we have a club in Peterborough, we have 4 or 5 clubs that are based in Devon, and a whole host up in Scotland as well. So we are UK wide, we are growing quite rapidly, but like I said, one of the good things is we now have the national online one, so no matter where you are, you just drop an email into info@andysmanclub.co.uk. They'll send you the link out. It's every Monday night, 7 till 9.
All right, excellent, super. One last question I'm going to ask you before I send you on your way, and it won't surprise you, this one. What is it in life that gives you meaning, Dan?
This is something that I think about almost daily around that, and I annoy Steph, who's just come in just now from a shift, bless her, constantly about asking what hers is and things along those lines. The biggest thing that gives me meaning is just making a difference. It's making a difference to people's lives. It's making a difference to my son's life, making a difference to Steph's life, my friends, my family, those that are closest to me, but also the wider community, of hoping that by me talking about the sort of stuff that we've talked about today, that somebody might take if one person takes one thing from our conversation that benefits their life, then for me, that's the meaning of making an impact. And that's what it is. It's not making an impact on my bank balance. It's not making an impact on the type of holidays I can go on, or the size of my house, or the size of my car, or anything along those lines. It's making those deep impact of improving people's lives by sharing experience and discussing some of the tools that I've used that have worked, and sharing platforms like the one that you've got, Joe.
Excellent.
What's yours, by the way?
Excellent. My people always bounce that one back to me. My what I find meaningful is not dissimilar to sharing the experience of what I've been through and helping other guys through what I know and what I'm learning on a daily basis, essentially. So if what I've learned, or if the information that I've gleaned in these 41, almost 42 years on this kind of planet are going to help other dads in their journey and help them to kind of navigate the difficulties that dads inevitably are going to face, then if it's just one person that I'm going to help, then that is going to that is kind of what gives me meaning, is making a difference and making a difference to other dads' lives, and helping them to really just understand themselves more. Really, I think that my kind of work and my passion, if you like, probably more than anything now, is really helping guys to understand more about themselves and go on that kind of journey within themselves, because I think society now has prompted us to externalize everything, and I think that the more we can kind of understand ourselves, what makes us tick, understand our own minds, how our minds react, what works for us, what doesn't work for us, I think that just puts us on such a better footing. And my thing has always been, sometimes people will often say, well, we in the sphere we are operating and will often say, well, why don't you talk about women's health, or why don't you say, and I think my kind of passion, if you like, is that I deeply believe that men firing on all cylinders, particularly dads firing on all cylinders, benefits everyone. It benefits their wives, it benefits their children, it benefits the impact that they can make on society. You know, guys that are kind of struggling are not going to be showing up as the dads they want to be. They're not going to be showing up as the husbands that they want to be and the relatives that they want to be, and they're not going to be making the impacts they want to be because they're not going to have the confidence and the self-worth and the understanding about themselves to do those things, because they're going to be firing on not all of their cylinders. And you know, dads and men firing on all cylinders benefits everyone, and that is my deep down belief. And I think that the more the work I do that can help that is going to be better, you know, on a societal level. I've got no illusions of being a politician, because I don't think that I can make the necessary impact I want to by doing that. I think that doing what I'm doing is going to impact more people as I want to than kind of getting into any kind of public office or anything. That would be a big ask in our lifetime to do that.
I think it's having that ability to have a deep impact on somebody rather than a superficial impact on a lot of people. And I think that's the determining factor for me. The people I have an impact on, I want to see their progress, because that's what is fulfilling. If you were to have a superficial impact on, say, 1,000 people, then you're not having as much of an impact on those 1,000 people anyway. It's only really superficial. But for you, you're not seeing the benefit that their lives are having. So that, how can that be fulfilling in a way as well? So
yeah, and I think there's an uncompetitive element to it as well, because I think we all hold back information these days, where we sort of like, oh, I won't tell someone that because it will seem like I'm a know-it-all, or I won't tell someone that because they could use it against me, or they can use it to compete against me. And I had something that happened today, and if I know something that's going to help someone, I'm going to tell them that. Okay, if they've read that book already, or if they've got that piece of information already, then they're going to tell me that they've got that piece of information. If they haven't, then if they haven't got that piece of information, then it could be the bit of information that just completely turns things round for them. And a prime example of that happened today on my mastermind group. We had a thread going as to what books we'd read, and The Untethered Soul by Michael Asinger comes up. I've listened to it on audio book. A couple of the other guys had, and all of a sudden, a guy's posted today, and he said, I listened to The Untethered Soul. It's amazing. I'm going to listen to it right back from the beginning again. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we hadn't had that conversation, if we hadn't had the post, if we hadn't sort of start discussing it, he would have never known about that book. And it's just little things like that, you know, that begin to kind of have a kind of snowball effect. And he'll probably say to someone, you know, when they're going through something, he'll say, look, have you listened to this? Check out this. It's going to change the way you think. And then that person will listen to it. It will change the way they think. And and that's what I love about kind of what we do. You know, we're all sharing and collaborating and sharing information and stuff all the time. And, you know, if someone gets just a tiny little nugget or a little bit, something that's gonna, you know, make them give them a turning point, or give them a bit of an edge, or give them a bit of self-knowledge about themselves that they didn't really know. That's probably one of as well as seeing someone's life change. I think that exchanging those ideas and information and stuff, I think that's probably the second most kind of meaningful thing that comes out of this, really. That when you start talking about the ideas, they start to have impact.
Yeah. Amazing.
And that is
Good
it.
Stuff.
I'm going to wrap it up on that note, mate.
Great stuff, mate. Really appreciate it. Really enjoyed it.
All right, no worries. There you go. Cheers, Dan.
Catch up soon. Cheers,
Take
Joe.
care, man.